Welcome everybody to our next installment on our Risen Fly Fishing video series. We hope you guys have enjoyed the last couple videos we've been working hard in putting out, and today we're going to start kind of a new series on how to start tying flies. So before we get started, thank you guys for watching. Make sure you like this video, subscribe down there so that you're notified every time we put a new video out for you guys to check out. If you've missed our other videos, we've got things like instructional videos, informational videos, days on the water. We've got some stuff we're going to do for fly tying moving into the future. This one is as basic as it gets of how do you literally get started. We're going to do some videos and giving more information on our gear too. So if you've got any questions, hopefully we can answer those by going over more detailed some of the things that we have to offer here at Risen Fly Fishing. If you haven't seen any of our gear before, you can hop on our website. The link's below, but you can also just type it into your search bar at www.risenfly.com. So today, as you can see, we've got a vise in front of us, and we get a lot of people in our shop, a lot of people online that are simply asking, how do I get started in tying flies? And that's what we're going to talk about today. So we're just going to get you all the absolute basics that you need, some basic skills to let you understand how to do this, and you can get started into the great world of tying flies. So before we get started on actually zooming in and looking at the vise and some of the details of tying flies, in my opinion, there are three and only three reasons to tie flies. One of them is saving money. No, it is not. You will not save money in tying flies. If you are only tying one specific fly and you buy all the materials for that, there's a small chance that you can save some money tying flies. But by the time that you get into it and you're buying a ton of materials and using 10% of them and buying dry fly nets for $100 a piece and using 10 feathers a year out of it, it's not going to save you money. So let's talk about why we tie flies. So the first one is you like doing it. I've got a handful of buddies that actually tie more flies than they probably fish because it's just part of the sport that they enjoy the most. So you can get very in tune to your fly fishing by tying your own flies, making things that you just enjoy tying on the end of the line and going to catch some fish. So the second one is that you like catching fish on something that you made. I've got buddies who make their own longbows or even their own fletchings for arrows. And they enjoy that. They enjoy having a little bit more of what they've made into their hobby. And I think tying flies gets that much more exciting when you've made something sitting at the vise, gone out to the stream, caught a fish on it. It just makes it that much more rewarding. And the last thing, the third thing of why I think you should tie flies is you want to make something you can't find. Whether you have an existing pattern out there and you're like, you know what? I think if I change the color on this or adjusted how this is tied just a little bit here and there, it might be better for my local waterway or might catch more fish. Maybe it doesn't catch more fish, but that's kind of the fun of it, is being able to make up your own patterns and solve some problems out there, or just being experimental and trying to find something new that you haven't seen out there at all. I know one thing in particular that I spent a couple years developing is my spinner pattern. So you can see on our website, our foam backpack spinner, is that I was not getting as many fish and getting more refusals on a poly wing. So I started to create a feather wing that was clipped on the bottom and then a piece of foam that's pulled over the top. We might try to show that in a future video, more of a intermediate or advanced tie there. But it's something that I started to catch more fish once I created this fly, and that was kind of the purpose behind it, was to solve a few problems of the fly sinking too much on me or me not being able to see it. So I've kind of took a couple years and developed a fly that worked for me. So without further ado, we want to get you into tying flies. So today we're going to talk about how I start, what tools are absolutely necessary, and literally how do we start attaching materials onto a hook. So today the basic fly that we're going to talk about is the green weenie. It's just something, literally we have one material, we have some thread and a hook, and we tie it on there and it goes out and catches a lot of fish. One of my top flies for bluegill. I catch a lot of trout on it, both stocked and wild, and I've even caught some bass on it as well. So it's a great all-around pattern, especially once we get into the summer months. So here we're going to see the other way to thread your bobbin. Let's see if I can get this on the first try. So we already showed you with this tool, which is your threader, and then this one is just a manual way to do it. So what you want to do is make sure your thread's pretty straight. And then you're going to just put a little bit into the tube there. You want to have a little bit of excess hanging there, and then pull it through with a little bit of a suck through the straw there. And there you go. So that is the next tool that you need. Always need a good pair of scissors. There's a lot of fly tying scissors out there. The sharper the better. If you're going to be cutting everything from your thread to your materials, to shaping a fly. So there's a lot of different purposes for this. So make sure you have at least one good pair of scissors. Your paper scissors that are about this big are not going to cut it, pun intended. And then at the end, you're going to see this little tool. This is probably the hardest thing about learning how to tie flies, is your whip finisher. This helps finish your fly so that you've got a little bit of a knot moving forward to finish off the fly. And then you're going to need some hooks and materials. So the best way to do this is to hop into your local fly shop, ask on your online forums, and say, hey, I want to tie this specific fly. What do I need for it? So today with our green weenie, we only need one material and one material only, which is called Ultra Chenille or Vernal in a chartreuse color. You can do it in many other colors, but this is probably the number one. And then we have a Nymph Hook. This is our 3769 Nymph Hook in a size 12. You can vary the sizes, but you want to try to keep the appropriate type of hook. You don't want to tie dry flies on Nymph Hooks or streamers on something else, because the hooks are built for the right dimensions overall to tie the flies. So Nymph Hooks are a little bit heavier, so your dry flies aren't going to float as well if you've got them on a Nymph Hook, but just try to keep appropriate through there. So today we're going to walk through all these little tools here and just start tying a fly. There are other tools of hair stackers and dubbing brushes and all kinds of other things out there that you can use in fly tying, but I would say these are the absolute things that are necessary to get started. So we're going to be using this Nymph Hook in a size 12. You can hop on our website and we've got tons of hooks available there. But the first thing you're going to want to do is figure out how your vise works. There's different ways that you're actually going to tighten a hook onto the vise. A lot of them are going to be some sort of lever action like this one is. You're going to have a small opening there, and when you press the lever down, it's going to hold it tight. So you can see that the hook, when I attach it, you want it somewhere in the bend there. You don't want it way up at the top. You don't want to hold it on the hook point because you might damage the hook point. Somewhere right on the end of the bend there, and you want to try to keep the shank of the hook pretty level. You don't want it at an angle. There are always a small little tricks of the trade here and there why you want an angle. A little bit of an angle down when you have a bead on it is actually nice so the bead doesn't slide back and forth. But for purposes here, you want to try to keep it as flat as possible. So I remember when I first started tying flies, I had absolutely no clue what I was doing, and I tried to tie a knot at the beginning because nobody had ever taught me anything. My wife got me a kit for Christmas, and I was like, okay, let's figure this out on my own. So I spent like 20 minutes trying to tie a knot there. It's a lot easier than that. So the first thing you're going to do is, I am right-handed. I'm going to hold your left hand is usually there to hold materials or thread or anything like that, and your right hand is going to be used for all of your tools. So we're going to hold the thread with our left hand here. And all we're going to do is we want a little bit of tension here. So I like to hold my bobbin at an angle here so it's flat and parallel to the ground or parallel to the hook. And we're going to take it and we're going to wrap it a little bit forward. So you can see here I've got like 2 or 3 wraps forward. We're going to still keep that thread tension, and now we're going to wrap it backwards over top of itself. So we've got a couple wraps forward and a couple wraps backwards. The key to making sure it's good is letting go. If you let go and it's holding on there, then you've done a good job. We've got a little bit of a tag end here of our thread, and we're just going to take our pair of scissors and cut it pretty flush to the hook. If at any point throughout your tie you accidentally cut your thread, this step is what you're going to do to start it again. So if you are tying something and you make a cut of a feather or another material and you cut your thread off, just start your thread all over again right where you did. You don't have to completely cut everything back off because you cut your thread and you have to start all the way over. So the next step here, as you can see, is I'm advancing the thread back to the back of the hook. I would say most, if not 90+% of your flies are going to work from the back of the hook towards the bend towards the front. In progression. So when you see a recipe online, it might have a tail material, a body material, a thorax material, and all of those are going to be moved in progression from back to front in how you tie them on, because this is your opening. So it's easier to add here and finish there because of the opening there. There are always exceptions to the rule, but that's the basics of tying a fly. So when we look here, we're gonna move our thread all the way back. You can see when I get to the hook point, I don't wanna catch it there. I'm gonna fray my thread and possibly break it because of the hook point. So now you wanna kind of move at an angle to get all the way towards the back. So we're back towards where the bend really starts there. And I'm just gonna leave my thread there so I can grab my material. This ultra chenille, you don't need a whole lot of it to tie this fly, but I always have a little bit more than I think that I'm gonna need. And we're just going to clip a little piece of that. So when I tie this pattern, I like to have my body a little bit uniform overall. So we don't wanna just tie it in here and then we'll have a little bit more bulk at the back end. So I actually like to take this material, once again, we're gonna pinch it with our left hand, and we're going to tie it in here. So you can take a little bit of a loose wrap just to make sure that it stays in that spot, and then you're going to tighten it down. And then with this, we're just going to take our thread and slowly wrap it up and capture this material all the way up to just a little bit before the eye. One of the biggest mistakes that a lot of people make when they're early on is they crowd the eye because they've got all this stuff they want to put in and they run out of room. So leave yourself a little bit of space at the end because we're going to have to finish this fly off. Now we're going to take our thread and advance it all the way back. For this pattern, there's two main ways to tie it. One is with a loop tail and one is without. We're going to show you the loop tail here because it's pretty simple. So all we're going to do is take this material, give it a little bit of a pinch with your left hand and form a loop. And then you can see you can pull with your bobbin to get more. Or if your bobbin is really tight or really loose and not in the right strength that you want it, you can manually, as you can see I've done, advance or pull thread back in to better manage it. So same thing, we're going to have a little bit of thread tension here and we're going to give a wrap. Make sure that your wraps are over top of each other. You don't want something like this because you can see that we're going to utilize this material and wrap it around the hook moving forward. So we're going to make about 2 thread wraps and then we're going to take this material and get it out of the way because we're going to wrap the shank of the hook with it next. And then you're going to advance your thread all the way up just behind the eye of the hook. So once you're there, now we've got this material, and this little tactic here is going to go into play for a lot of different materials out there. Once you learn the basics, you'll be able to do the exact same thing with, you're tying a prince nymph and you need to wrap it with peacock curl. It's the same technique, just a different material. You're tying woolly buggers, you're using a larger chenille to wrap the body. So once you learn a couple of these basics, then you're going to be able to apply them to a lot of other patterns there. So now once you've done that and your thread is a little bit up towards the front, towards the hook, the eye, you're going to take this and you're going to slowly wrap it. I like to use my pointer finger just to hold it down and keep a little bit of tension there. There's also a couple other tools that you can use, like a pair of hackle pliers that can hold onto the material and make it easier. And there's also rotary vices that will actually spin. This one can spin if you want to, but I want to keep it pretty basic here. And all you're going to do is wrap this material all the way up just a little bit behind the eye of the hook. Once you get to this point, I'll move my fingers out of the way, you're going to capture this material. This is when I use my left hand. And all I'm going to do is kind of pull it over and make a couple thread wraps right over top of that. As you can see, I can let go and all the material is staying put. Now I'm going to take my scissors and we're going to clip off as close to we can to the eye of the hook with this material without cutting our thread. Like I said, if you cut your thread, start it over, and then we're going to finish the fly up. At the end of almost every single fly, you're going to want to build a little bit of a head. All that means is you're just going to take your thread on your bobbin and clean everything up. You're going to make a handful of thread wraps and slowly capture that loose end there and build the head of your fly. Now that we've got the head of our fly done, we need to figure out how to get this thread off and not have the fly fall apart. This is the hardest tool that you're ever going to learn how to use because everything else is a whole lot easier than this. So this is a whip finisher. You can do this in the beginning, and if you really struggle with this, here's your cheat hack to get it moving, is you can do what's called a half hitch. So what I like to do is twist my hand upside down so that my pinky is facing there, pinch and twist, and now you formed a little loop. And all that loop's going to do is slide right over the top of the hook. This is called a half hitch. You want to do a couple of them to finish it off. And then, which I don't have here, you can have some head cement, which is basically clear nail polish. Put a little dab on there and that should hold it. This is a little bit harder. What this tool is actually going to do is take your thread and wrap it over top of itself and kind of create a knot so that it doesn't come undone. So we're going to take this tool. Some people like it over top. I like it underneath there. And you're going to capture on this little hook here and what I like to call the mountain underneath here. So we're going to take our thread, and as you can see, I'm putting a little bit of pressure on there. The thread is in here. It is on this mountain. I'm going to pull a little bit of extra thread and I'm going to take it even with my vise. So now we've got kind of a right angle there. This is the tricky part. Now that we have it captured on those 2 points, this part of the tool you can see rotates. And all we're going to do is make a little rotation and form this triangle. This triangle is key because right at the point of that triangle is where you're going to create your knot through the whip finish. So let's do that one more time. We've got this, it's going to be on the little hook on the mountain. Take your left hand and make your thread parallel to the vise. And then with your right hand, you're going to do a little wrist twist and you're going to form this triangle. Now where that overlap is, this whole handle twists, and all we're going to do is take it and wrap it around there. So you want to do at least 4 or 5 twists. As you're twisting, your left hand's going to come a little bit farther because you're using up thread. If you hold it in the same spot, you're probably going to snap your thread off. So we're going to make a couple whips here. When you're done, what I like to do is take my whip finish tool, point it straight up in the air, and we're going to slide it off the mountain there at the back. Now that we've got that, this will actually move independently because we've wrapped that over top of it, and we're going to slide it all the way down to our fly, and then a little hook at the end, we're going to slide off and pull tight. That is your whip finish. If you watch anything in this entire video, try to do that over and over again until you figure it out. Now, once we cut it off clean, there's your fly. We're completely done, and we're ready to go catch some fish with this. So when we look at this fly overall, we worked from the back to the front. We added materials. We threw our thread on in the beginning. We've whip finished at the end. That's it. There's a lot of very generic flies out there that you can tie with 1 or 2 materials, just adding a couple things onto the hook. We're going to try to show you some more upper level beginner stuff and adding different materials on, and then some intermediate ties into the future as well. So here's a couple final tips that we have when you're just starting to tie flies. The first thing is to take the exact same pattern in the exact same way and tie it over and over and over again in one sitting. So if you're going to tie something like your green weenie, grab an entire pack of hooks, a little bit of material, and tie at least 5 to 10 of them. The reason why I say that is that every time that you tie it, you're going to realize, oh, I made a mistake here. I put too many thread wraps, or I didn't tie it in the right way. And the next time you're going to improve on that. If you tie one of these and one of these and one of these that are all completely different, you're really not going to improve your skills. So sit down, have a nice hot or cold drink with you, take your time, focus on what you're doing, and tie the exact same thing over and over and over again. You're going to see drastic improvement as you're moving from your first fly to your 6th fly if you're going to tie a half a dozen of them. Next thing that you need to do is post some pictures online. I see that all the time, that people are like, here's my first fly, what do you think? And the biggest thing that I always see back on those that I give correction to is tie known patterns. Don't go into tying flies as a very beginner and make something up as your first fly. I love helping people out, but I also really don't think that you're going to help yourself out if you're, picking hair off of your golden retriever and feather out of your pillow and trying to create something out of it. I laugh because I actually see it all the time there, that you're just throwing things together and you're not really gaining the skill set to tie some flies. So when you're looking at something like this, a green weenie is a great fly, your San Juan worm, there are some very basics out there that you need to start with. And if you tie the exact same thing over and over again, you'll make these known patterns that are already known to catch some fish. And once you get those skill sets down, then you can start experimenting and trying different materials or different techniques to be able to tie your flies. Start simple. Keep it simple in the very beginning. Tie a known pattern, tie it over and over again. Then once you've learned that skill, you can add that skill to another one. Like I said before, we're using this ultra chenille here to be able to wrap it on a hook. Maybe the next time you're going to use something like peacock curl that you're going to tie on there. We're going to look at pheasant tail. A pheasant tail is a very simple pattern that you're only using 2 main materials there, and you're doing a lot of the wrapping that you're doing on here too. So keep it simple in the very beginning. Tie the same thing over and over again. Ask for help where you need it, and keep trying. Your fly shops are going to be great resources for that too. So what I would recommend when you're looking to tie a fly is to walk into the shop, say, what do I need for this pattern? So for instance, if you want to tie a pheasant tail, some of the things you're going to need are a nymph hook. You're going to need a pheasant tail, go figure that. A wire, a small thin wire. So copper wire is great, it kind of holds the fly together. Peacock curl to be able to wrap the front, and some sort of thread. So that's an example of a material list that you're going to walk out of that fly shop with and be able to go out and tie some flies. We hope you guys have enjoyed the video today. This is the absolute first step of tying flies. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments section below. We would love to hear them. And then you can also give us recommendations on future videos moving forward. Thank you guys for your time today. Like and subscribe this video into our channel, and we will see you next time.